And all right, we are live. We should make sure that Claudio actually shows up more often too. By the way,
I think he's distracted and time changes and
yeah.
stuff.
All right. Welcome to the virtual brown bag. Just a reminder of how this works. There are two links. One to if you just want to view, and another one if you want to participate. Just join our Slack, which is listed on our website, and you will be able to join in and participate. Again, this is just our weekly general developer chat about whatever you want. Reminder, it's streamed to YouTube. Don't share anything that is going to get you in trouble at work. And that's it.
Yeah.
So how's it going?
Good. I've been looking around. I've been playing around getting back into C# land. So I've been hacking on some C# stuff. Just got it working on the Mac, and that's sort of weird. But it's pretty interesting. Declaring variables, it's a thing.
but you could var everything now. So.
Yeah, but still, I was messing with a class, and I was like setting a little property, and I was like, "What are you complaining about? I told you what it is. Like, what's?" Oh, I was like, "Oh, I need to tell you that. Hey, yeah, you have a property called this."
Yeah. I've actually been arguing also lately that doing var as opposed to explicit names is usually the correct thing to do beyond just stylistically. But
why would you say it's besides stylistically? Because it is sort of stylistic. But
so here's the thing. It basically boils down to the new keyword. So if you remember from your time in .NET land, if you have a function on a base class, you can, if it's virtual or abstract, you could override it with the override keyword. But if it's not, you could use the new keyword to basically hide it with another function of the same name. So what happens?
I never did that, but okay, makes sense.
Yeah, right. So what happens when you are getting back an instance? You have a method that's returning an instance of something.
Okay.
And then you're taking that item and calling a method on it. Well, if you use var, the thing that's returned, it'll be whatever kind of the type that was returned from the method. Right? And when you call the method, it'll be the method on the type, including the new one that hides the origin of the method, which was put in on purpose.
I assume you have that same method signature.
That adds like an explicit annotation to there saying, okay, downcast it to this other thing, which forces the method on that to be called. So it's a small thing, but in that scenario, you will actually be getting unexpected behavior if you're not using var.
All right, that's a fair point. I have to see it with code to confirm that, but I was like, all out. I mean, clearly, you've been dealing with it a lot more than I have lately.
Oh, I haven't dealt with it, but like I've been making this argument, and then I eventually had to come up with a reason for why I'm making this argument. But that's like the one case where yes, it actually does make a difference beyond stylistically.
So I question. Is there, we have with JavaScript, we have JSHint and ESLint sort of situation. Is there something for C# these days? So you said, like, guess what, style cop or something?
It's style cop, but why?
I'm just curious to see, like, is there something like more in the vein of the linters than?
Good question. I think there is, but style cop is the only thing that I know of, and honestly, I hate almost all of style cop's rules. I think every single style cop rule I hate. So I don't know. I think there is. I think there's a couple of people that have come up with something that's a little more.
Yeah, I was figuring there'd be something that people have after a while. There'd be something that they'd match. There's more, because I was like, it's been a while since went in C# land code like C sharpers, and it's been a while. So having something that would lint or hint or give me a clue would be more helpful, versus because otherwise there's going to be underscores everywhere and lowercase stuff, and because I'm just used to doing so many different languages.
I honestly, my rule lately, I don't underscore everything. I just go lowercase for anything that's private, including method names,
Okay.
and uppercase for anything that's not private, so even protected stuff. So anything that's not constrained to this exact unit is uppercase. Everything else is lowercase. That's a much, because a lot of people do like uppercasing of all methods, but that's not an important distinction. The most important distinction is scope. So,
Right.
so that I like that sort of thing. And then prefixing with underscore, I don't really bother with. I don't know. It's like an old school C thing.
Yeah. Well,
Because
I
we
guess
want-
who's prefixing an underscore already in C
Well,
sharp. I was like, this is. I'm just used to it in different languages. It seems like pretty universal. It is old school though.
And I think the only reason they really did that was because like they would format the file and it would group all the variables together, variable names together, and
To me, it harkens back to like Hungarian notation sort of thing, but where you
Right.
drop off the Hungarian part and just keep the underscores.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about today, and actually this ties into C sharp a little bit because it doesn't come from that world, but it overlaps with a lot, is design patterns. Um, and I know that they've been out of fashion, kind of. And Seth, you asked on the main chat why that was the case, so I think we can kind of talk a little bit about that, and then maybe talk about kind of some of our favorite design patterns
Okay.
and kind of what we feel about them in general. I guess let's start with just defining design patterns. You want to give it a shot, JB?
But I was like, it's your topic.
No,
why
I
don't you
can
define
go.
design
I
patterns?
just don't want it to be
Just like common best practices for solving typical problems. It's almost like I want because now I'm like a polyglot, have multiple languages, and design patterns is something that's mostly focused on from object-oriented languages. I see that they have a more focus on like C# and Java and a little bit of Ruby. And to me, they are like language constructs that are like algorithms. They're formulaic ways of solving typical problems that capture best practices. And the general idea is to eliminate complexity, be more resilient to change, and just yeah, that's sort of where I take from it. And the common ones would be strategy pattern, adapter pattern, factory pattern, visitor pattern. So it's a way also to develop a common nomenclature, common language between programmers. So instead of us having to describe something in detail, why we chose this or what it does, if I'm talking to George, I can be like, oh, I'm using the factory pattern here. He immediately has a group of understanding of what that means, and probably be an understanding of why I chose it or what I'm doing with it. So that's sort of my take on it.
So I think that in my view, that last part you said about the common language is way far and away the most important part of it, like more than the algorithms or any particular thing. Or, for example, in our Surge developer chat today, someone was showing us like, oh my god, I have this code that has like 20 levels of nested ifs. And we're like, well, so we could just be like, that should probably just be solved with a chain of responsibility pattern, and then like everyone understands what we're talking about.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's a good idea. Like that's how it should work. So I think that sort of thing is more important, and it's really weird because in a lot of the reading that I've done, like the term design pattern came from the Gang of Four book that was written in Java land, where they were like, here's like 25 different design patterns, like flyweight and whatever, and they were like completely focused on like how this works and stuff like that. But and when I first learned about them, learned them in Java and in C#, that's what I was focused on too, and especially as I move on to other languages, like at some point, I think it was around the point that I picked up that design patterns in JavaScript book and was like, well, this is nonsense. It's like I don't care about the implementation. Why are they, And I think a lot of it, what that boiled down to, I think the revelation I had when I was like making my way through that book was like, wait a second, pretty much all of these patterns are just, I'm gonna have something that's gonna return something. Like that's
Okay.
it.
I had the same experience reading that book, except I didn't actually finish it. And one of the problems is that design patterns can mean multiple different things, right? Like, so in JavaScript, it's all these hacky ways to do encapsulation and scope, and then there's other design patterns that are actually like just for structure and organization. And these are two things that are very important, but they don't perfectly overlap, and like it's weird just to read books that just starts with a list without, I think, categorizing them in I think that categorization is the most important way, the most important thing.
Yeah, well, but again, I think that's true. But again, I think that categorization starts at the wrong end and kind of focuses more on what they do rather than just the idea of, as developers, we need just a common language, a language to refer to these things, which are like a higher level than a class, right? It's a class of a certain that does a certain thing, and I think that's the key to it. Is like we just need a language for that, and I mean, like, to some degree we have it. Like, right, when I say, this is a factory method, everyone understands what I'm talking about. This is a method that's going to return. It's not going to return a very simple. It's like an object that's an integer or something like that. It's going to return some sort of object that is meant, or some sort of thing that is meant to be worked with in some other way. And I mean, like, I think that's going to be the same thing in, you could use the term factory method working just as well in Elixir, JB, right? I mean, just in Elixir land, you would be returning a tuple or something.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. That'd be kind of weird. Like, what would you call a factory in Elixir? To me, I would not expect a class or a tuple. I mean, obviously you don't have classes, but I wouldn't expect a tuple or map or anything. I would expect a function with the idea that
a function that returns another function.
Right, and that function, what it does is different based on the input I put in there. Because like for factory in C#, the expectation is I would get an object that would then have some sort of either like properties or data or some other stuff like that. Yeah, that has behavior associated with it. I would expect that with my factory as well. But then, of course, that ties into strategy because I'm really talking about it's a factory that returns me strategy to handle the problem.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking about with Elixir is more like you get a tuple back with with functions as some of the keys.
You could, yeah, that makes sense. You could do something like that.
And I mean, like, so yeah, I agree, and like, I think it's interesting because factories probably one of, like, not many of them have caught on other than factory as far as terminology. So maybe
strategy pattern thing, I think most people know what that is.
That's so simple.
That's why it's gone on. It's like so simple, everyone knows how to do it.
But it is literally just a function. Like, no, and that's one of the things that actually drives me crazy. There's a Head First Design Patterns book.
Yeah, love it.
With like looking upward, and like people talk a lot about how great it is. I remember looking at it and be like, there are 20 pages here on a factory pattern, which is literally just write a function. Like, that's it. That's the whole thing.
Well, I like it because it's very basic in terms of like anyone with any skill level can approach it and they can immediately walk away with a firm understanding of the concepts. So I think compare it as like I'd rather recommend that book than the Gang of Four book, which would be like this is some heavy reading, dude.
I would recommend that. Yeah. But like there's a couple other ones. Like I think Decorator is one that's pretty pervasive, right? And that applies in other languages and stuff like that.
Common ones between there. Proxies, adapters, those tend to be ones people have used.
Proxy, adapter. Proxy, I feel like one is not successful as a design pattern, at the very least because it's a very overloaded term.
Right.
So say this is a proxy, you don't necessarily know what I'm talking about.
Right. We'll do some examples. I mean, we're throwing out patterns, but I guess, describe a little bit of some of these things? Do you have some ideas? Go for it.
Yeah, you made that distinction. I was like, you wrote this incredibly. It was terse to the point of obscurity. This function that returned a function as an example in our virtual brown bag chat, and it was something having to do with. I think it was something that. It was a way of wrapping a React component. I forgot exactly what it did. And I was like, that cool decorator, bro. And you were like, actually, that's a proxy. Like,
I guess I don't know. Did I do this or did George do this?
no, this was something that George did.
Okay, I'm about to say, I was like, I don't remember saying that. But George, that sounds good.
But not actually. But that's actually one of the interesting. It was a proxy, but not actually using the JavaScript proxy feature, which is one of the things that I kind of feel like proxy isn't super successful in as a design pattern term, because like, what exactly are we meaning by that? And that's the thing. Like, I'll show my screen to like kind of point out what I mean about some of this stuff. But like, okay, like let's say, oh, whatever. Let's say I was going to create let's say I was going to create a function that that did something like this. My API, right? And then it took that, and then return. I'm just gonna, and then did something like const Firebase, right? I don't actually know how to use Firebase, but something like query users.
Most people, they don't know how to use it either.
Query, I don't know, something like that, right? Insert user, and then you would do something like user Firebase.insert, something like that, right? Well, is that function an adapter? Is that function a factory? Is that function a decorator? And the answer is kind of yes. I mean, it's probably not a decorator, but certainly adapter and a factory, sure. The thing that's interesting, it's the thing, like, and I could use both those terms. I would use factory. I would say, oh yeah, my API is a factory if the aspect of it that I was talking about was that it returns something that you're going to work with further. I would use adapter if the thing that I was talking about was that it basically abstracts away the Firebase API into my own API.
Correct.
But it's both of those things, like very easily. It's both of those things.
Well, I'd argue if you were going to be picky, I would almost argue that it isn't a factory because yes, although it's returning an object, there's not multiple objects you can return from this one function call. Now, like you provide an input and you say, hey, I want the Firebase one, and then it would return a Firebase object. Then I'd say it's more a factory, but it's sort of an adapter. It is a factory method in that it creates an object, but yeah.
Yeah, unless someone did like something like, let's say we did something like his browser environment, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Then to me it's more, but that's just nitpicky, to the point of, this is the whiteboard architecture, system architect coffee shop discussions of is this or is it not, and the end go, does it matter? No.
How is that an adapter? I'm sorry, I don't really know.
So the adapter point of the adapter is abstracting away someone else's interface to provide your own, and so think of it a little bit like, and the reason why you do that is so that API changes from this other third-party library or third-party system or something are isolated away from your core application.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes
Yeah, it's just basically I have a thing that does something, and I'm gonna wrap it in some way that'll, for some reason, and the reason might be like, hey, like for example, in statically typed languages, the reason to use an adapter often is like something like, you know, you have an I store stuff interface, right? So you have an interface. So I store users, right? Well, you know, some library you pour off the shelf, right, is not gonna have this method, right? So you create your own class, which wraps that thing and then implements this interface. So in statically typed languages, that's kind of a more common thing, but still works in JavaScript, right? And, you know, you want a query user's method, and none of the libraries that you're using have a method named query users.
Right.
Yes. Right.
So adapter is more about intentionality, and factory pattern, at least to me, is more about just it's the aesthetic almost, right?
The factory pattern is literally a function that's going to return something. So JB is saying it can return different things, and that's an abstract factory.
Yeah, and I guess that's where most of the time that's what I'm gonna be
But
using.
like, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like people use those two interchangeably, meaning they are the same thing. So and then again, like if you did something like what I did here, well, which one is that even? Because
Right.
it's not a different object, but one property on the object might be different.
Right.
Depending
It's not a decorator because a decorator takes a function, that was my understanding, as an argument, and this doesn't necessarily do that.
Yeah, so the difference between a decorator still looks very, very similar. And I mean, as in JavaScript, when you talk about decorators, you're usually talking about decorating functions. But a decorator would look very similar, except for, yeah, I mean, you don't actually have to take a function, but like, or something like that, external, right? Storage. And then what you would do is something like and then you pass in the key is that you're passing in my ID. Right. The key is that in a decorator, you're actually exposing the same interface,
Right.
rather than a different one. And so a decorator can be used interchangeably with the original object or not. Whereas an adapter, it's really all about making a different interface.
Gotcha.
Like that's the difference. But then also, like, a lot of times people talk about function decorators. Well, the interface for a function is like .call, just call. So pretty much any function decorator is a decorator, and is also an adapter, and is also a factory.
Yeah, that's like, there's a lot of names is what they mean and how they do stuff. It's sometimes
Right.
a little more. There's a lot of gray area, but the what they're trying to do and accomplish is understood, and why you're wanting to perform these things. What you call it, that means the focus of what you're trying to achieve.
So adapters abstracts away, while a decorator doesn't necessarily have that intention.
Yeah, it's basically decorating. You can argue like it's supplementing some additional features. Meanwhile, adapter is trying to abstract away some change that could happen, and that's most of the stuff is focusing on the idea is that software changes and there's complexity associated with it, and what we're trying to do is limit the impact of change and limit the complexity so that when something breaks, because something's always going to break or whatever, that it has a minimal amount of impact on it. That's why we don't write everything in one big class, and that's why we don't have a method with a bunch of code. If it's a huge method, we've identified that hey, these things lead to brittle code that breaks when we do stuff. And that's really the core at it, is like we don't want stuff to break. And so everything is built upon this idea of, can we abstract this stuff away? How can we do this best way so that when change happens, we can easily adapt to it? Even to the idea that sometimes people make the cases. Let's say you did the API thing that George was sharing with the Firebase. And the idea, some people say, is like, well, that way, if we want to swap out Firebase for another data storage, we can easily do that. And I always counter with that same thing as like with the database, like, oh, we can swap out a database, and we can easily do that. And I'm always thinking, well, I've done a lot of software projects, and very rarely do we swap out the entire database. A lot of times,
swap it out in testing. A lot of times.
Yeah, well, it's like. It's not meanwhile, there's a lot of people are going, we're kind of stuck with MySQL, or this is what, not saying MySQL is bad, but sometimes it'd be like, or they have Mongo and they're like, look, this is what we do. So using that as a justification while you're doing is bad, but the idea of doing what you did is still good. The idea of why you want to abstract that away so that when Firebase does change or something happens, that it's isolated in that one area. Also, that means from a dependency standpoint, you have dependency in Firebase in that one location, and meanwhile everyone else is dependent on your own code. So there's a lot of other benefits besides that. We can swap out the database anytime we want. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really happen. And if you do, you're kind of comfortable with the idea that this isn't an overnight thing. You don't just wake up one morning and go, you know what, let's just swap the database out.
At the same time, again, like you do swap it out in testing a lot of times. You do occasionally need to supplement it, and if the database library that you're using doesn't have hooks that allow you to intercept every single call, well, you're going to have a bad time adding logging to each database query, right? So it can be useful in that, and then okay, well that's a good reason to use an adapter or a decorator, something like that. Which I say that all while at the same time being completely against the repository pattern.
What's the repository pattern? Well, wait, while you continue your statement, then you can answer.
No. So the repository pattern is that exact same idea that we said. Here, I'll share my screen. This is one of the things I kind of wanted to touch a little bit about. So I want to talk a little bit about why design pattern kind of fell out of favor as well, and this is one of the reasons, and also shortfallings of design patterns. So this comes from the Java world, right? Where and this is specifically how to interact with data storage. So the idea being that you would create an interface, and it would be something like customer store.
Your screen, can you change which monitor your screen is pointed to?
Oh, is it pointed to my notes?
Yeah.
Whatever. I'll just do that.
Spoiler.
Yeah. And have and then you would do something like get by ID, right? You pass an ID, and then you would have customer list, and you would say get by name, string name, and then you would have something like bool try save, right? And then you would have a class, it would be a public class, customer store implementation, which implement the customer store. And so this pattern, actually, I believe where it was first done, where it was first proposed, was in domain-driven design, which is
right.
Which is a whole book about how to do higher-level architecture. And the idea being that, okay, now kind of all your functionality about all your logic about how to get and persist customers is grouped. So you have your customer class, which is what a customer is, but then this allows you to get a location for how to get customers, right? And if you're doing all of this with SQL, well, your customer get by ID is going to be like, okay, all your SQL code, right? Would go in there, and it's all like isolated and not spread out throughout the application, which in itself is a totally good idea. Having classes like that. I have issues with the pattern. I also don't think that, like, this is what people did mostly when they implemented it, and I don't think, and Jamie, I think me and you had this conversation one time where I was like, hey, but this is not really how it's intended to be used, because one of the key things when working with repositories is the idea of transaction control. And if all your SQL code is in here, how the heck are you going to, at the same time, save a new customer, and the order that they're creating if they're not in the same repository, right? So, and in that case, okay, then you really need something that's like a repository manager.
Unit of work, right?
Like
work pattern.
Yeah, and do like get unit of work, and then be like var UOW, and then be like UOW dot customer dot try save, right? Try save new customer, UOW dot orders.
What happens when try save fails?
But yeah, I know, right? Yeah. If not, do something. So it'd be something like this. So if not, throw or like UOW dot cancel. Throw error, right? and then you're doing something like, okay, create a new order that is an order of the customer, and then you have to try to do UOW.commit, and like it's just a lot of work to be doing this stuff that really should be grouped together, and and at that point when you're doing this, like, especially if you have an ORM that hides away the actual writing of the SQL, well, this is no simpler than just using the freaking ORM to begin with, right? It's just now you have to also write a repository manager and the unit of work and the actual logic for how all this is supposed to freaking work to begin with, and all that infrastructure code, which is just a lot of stuff. So actually.
So I guess nowadays it's like, because back when I was doing C#, any framework was a thing, but it was still pretty early. And
framework's pretty good now. Yeah.
And I guess now I'm like thinking, like, is it just invading everywhere?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's pretty ubiquitous. I like it. It's fine. Actually, the best thing about Entity Framework is its migration stuff, which is really, really nice. They're actually better than migrations I've seen in any other library.
I mean, I guess because it automatically makes the migrations for you.
Yeah, because it writes, the way it works is it'll write them into the project,
right?
And it can auto-generate them. Like, you just modify your domain and tell them, it'd be like, take a guess and generate a migration. We'll do it,
right.
And you can look at what it did, and then you can kind of commit, and then it'll just auto-deploy, and it's very, very nice. Combine them in different ways, and it's got a lot of issues that I have problems with, but like still, it's like by far the best one that I've seen.
So what is the big negative from your point of view of like the active record pattern type of approach? Because I guess I'm now from Rails world and so forth, that active record pattern is pretty awesome for me. I love it, and so.
Okay, so the active record pattern, and when we say active record pattern, the way that this works in Rails is you would have your customer class, and you would have a static method on it, which would be like get by ID, right? Or that's not how it works in Rails. They have like
Find and stuff like that. But close enough. Close enough. Then.
But like they expose query, right? A customer dot query where name. Or I think
you'd be like where name is this and not the other.
Okay. Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Right, and that would return. So my problem with that is aggregate is that, and it's really mostly the people that use it. It's the same thing as with the repository. The people that use it don't pay attention to aggregate roots, and it kind of makes it harder to pay attention to aggregate roots. So you end up wiring all these classes together because your tables are wired together in a certain way, and it's not happening because it's serving your model. It's just because the tables are wired that way for some optimization.
Because of the relational, man.
yeah. So that's really my only problem, and like beyond that, like just in a statically typed language, obviously difficult to mock and stuff.
Interesting.
Subsonic and C# was doing this. I was like, yeah, I like that it's a thing, but that's a total pain in the ass.
Yeah, I guess I ran into a problem with, was it the backend link bus SQL, link for SQL, the thing before Entity Framework or whatever. Mm-hmm. Even within Hibernate, sort of same thing. And Hibernate wasn't as bad, but it definitely came problem in Star projects where it was, you would have to do everything inside this unit of work type thing, and then or this context, this data context, and then you're like, save this data context. And there's this obfuscation and abstraction away from what exactly am I calling on the database, versus the attraction to me with Active Record is you can, like, when you run an Active Record query, or if you run something like that, or execute a method or a function or whatever you want to call it, like, you pretty much know what it's going to do. Like, you can look at the SQL it generates and you go, that's what I would expect. Like, it wouldn't, there's very few surprises. The only surprises that really happens is a lot of times if you do lazy loading of relationships, and then you have n+1 queries, but that's because you weren't paying attention. And I'm fine with a little craziness on the read versus the writes, because we had many times where you're just like, you would insert something, but like then it wouldn't insert, and it became weird. I can't remember exact details because it was like 10 years ago or something nowadays. But like, I just remember that being a problem in Active Record. It was very pleasant to be able to know that. Yeah, look, I'm dealing with the database. I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm doing this.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, like, there's nothing fundamental to the Active Record pattern of that. I mean, like, you could just as easily do, which is like the entity framework way of doing this would be db.customers.where c.name equals John. I mean, there is nothing fundamentally different. You're just complaining about the way its internals work, which they still sometimes do.
But see, when you get a customer, if you get a new customer, is it customer.save?
You would do you would
db.save customer.
Customers.add
okay.
customer, and then db.save changes. Like that's it.
Yeah, see, it's the save changes.
Because that lets you like queue up.
Yeah.
But the reason why. Right. So if you're
that solves your unit of work issue you're having below with the customer and orders.
It is a little bit of a poorly structured unit of work, but I mean, like, yeah, that's another problem with Active Record. If you're doing customer.save, right?
Yeah.
Or I guess it'd be lowercase customer. But like, how do you control unit of works then?
They have transactions and stuff, but I haven't really found that.
But that's a lot of my problem with repositories to begin with. Again, when I talk about aggregate roots. Like, and that was really a thing. Like he didn't invent that term in the first book yet when he put out domain-driven design. So like that was a lot of problems that would happen with design patterns in general. And people were like, awesome, we're going to use these everywhere.
Yeah.
And just made just completely overcomplicated stuff, and that's where you start getting the joke where like in Java you have a strategy session factory or something like that.
Yeah. What was it? Yeah, I saw something like that.
Yeah.
Like, the way they did it in Java was crazy.
And which I've actually totally seen. happened in C# a little too. But then also the same type of thing happened in domain-driven design, where he basically writes this book, and there's two really, really big concepts, like ubiquitous language, which is basically, the terminology of your code should mirror what your actual business people use. Not a wild concept, but it's worth saying. And then he had like a bunch of design patterns that they found were helpful for that. And then like chapter 17 was the other big concept, which was bounded context, which is basically don't try to jam all your functionality in one application if it's like different, if it's doing different things. And everybody in the world like just read to like about chapter 16. Like, that's it, and nobody read about that. And then it wasn't until later that they started really pushing that bounded context thing and be like, no, but this is more important. And that's kind of, once you push hard enough on that, I feel like a lot of the need for transactions falls away, and you don't really need to worry about it, right? Because fundamentally, like nowadays, I consider if I need a transaction, that's probably a code smell that I need to restructure some of my domain stuff. Because why do I need to change multiple things atomically? If I need to change something atomically, it should just be the one thing.
Okay, I'm going to let you say that and go away because I'm like, I want a specific example, but that would derail us into another thing. I put a link in the group chat though to a little bit talking about the overuse of design patterns, the FizzBuzz Enterprise Quality Coding. It's a FizzBuzz Enterprise Edition, where it's just doing FizzBuzz, and like it's like all sorts of patterns and implementations and so forth. And it's just FizzBuzz, and it has like click inside and do look at the source, and then just look at
there's unit tests written.
Yeah, and then look at the implementation. There you go. Look how many folders and other stuff there. Factories. There we go.
Yeah. It's evenly divisible strategy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is exactly why it's like it's mocked all the times, but it's still 134 issues. And 24 pull requests. Beautiful.
Developers, we love it. Like, it's FizzBuzz. It's FizzBuzz. It literally can be written in like 7 lines of code.
But I mean, like design patterns still are totally useful, and that's one of the things kind of I want to bring up, because I think as you kind of go more into other languages, you start seeing other design patterns which you can then like bring back into other languages. So like now that I've gone to JavaScript and done more JavaScript, I certainly rely a lot more, even in my C#, on passing through asynchronous functions, right? Or passing through callback functions to run later. That was something we barely ever did. Or actually, after spending time in JavaScript, where you have to do stuff like walk a UI tree a lot of times, or walk a JSON object, like the visitor design pattern is probably my favorite design pattern, which I barely understood before. So I mean, do you have any patterns like that that stick out for you? That
you can always tell someone's new to Ruby when they're asking about how they can check the type of an object. That's always good. That's always a good measurement. Because teach a lot of people Ruby, and you'd be like, Ruby, you don't care. They're like, what do you mean you don't care? And they're like, you just don't care what type it is. Like, it's irrelevant. It's like, just call the method and be like, but what if the method is there? It's like, well, they're the idiot that gave you an object and didn't have the right method.
And in C# you could do that too a little bit now that we have the dynamic keyword. I definitely feel better about that now, especially if you're like internal to a class. Yeah, just dynamic it. It'll be fine.
Elixir do a lot more recursion now in my Ruby that I shouldn't, because Ruby and recursion is not good. And changing state
every time changing state, I get from Elixir land, I get very ugly feelings, and when I'm doing the Ruby stuff, I'm like, this feels wrong. Like I shouldn't be doing this. Like even in your pseudocode, I was like, changing state. Like how does he get the customer data back? I was like, oh, he can just update it, and then the customer object will update it, and I'm like, oh no, he needs to return the new customer.
I don't have any state in my code.
Whatever you did, try save customer, and then after your customer got saved, you didn't save the order, which I assume is how the customer now has an ID, which did not.
Yeah, but you're assuming saving a customer modifies it. What if it doesn't?
What if you, I guess you're generating IDs, as it could be yes, you could have a UID ID. Yeah, so I did read into it. My bad. My bad.
No, that's actually one of the reasons I greatly prefer UIDs. Because
I had a coworker I worked with who was big on that, and I don't know. I went back and forth on it. I guess I'm on the side now of the I went back and forth. Now I'm back on the I don't need a UID. I understand the need for it, but then suddenly I have two IDs running around, and you have to get rid of it and get weird, and suddenly because you also been saying with like Rails and Phoenix, like I'm giving up a lot by forcing that, but I guess I could dive into figuring out how to use it.
You're giving up a lot by forcing what?
Like automatically linking foreign key. Well, no, I guess as a property. I'd have to experiment with it. It's just, I guess it's laziness. So it should be like, I don't need to do it, so I'm just going to keep my little NID.
I'm not saying there aren't pluses and minuses, but I don't like asking my database pretty please for an identity of a thing. Like, but database should have nothing to do with it. Actually, if I had like an identity server, that would be like kind of cool. And
identity server, that his entire job is to give you IDs to things.
Give identities to things.
Yeah. See, no. Just microservice craziness.
Yeah. Or in Elixir land, that would be an
OTP application that you can just ask an ID for. Yeah. And then you'll be like, why am I generating this again? What? I'll just call you ID. Oh, speaking. Are we done with design patterns, or what are we doing?
I don't know. Does anyone want to talk about it anymore? We can be done.
I got a cool new library. See if I can pull it up. Here, let me share my screen, and I'll share what I got on stuff. So here you go. Look, I'm on a Mac, and I'm running C#.
Oh, really?
So
are you just playing around with it, or there's?
Yeah, I just installed it, play around with it. I guess here, look, you see, you got these little references, which is pretty neat. So I know how many times they're actually called. Pretty cool. And I can just, I have IntelliSense here. I don't know. I guess here they have some stuff like, all right. So the JavaScript one would let me like auto finish things, but I guess this one doesn't. And then you run and compile it, and there you go.
That's cool. Oh, .NET Run does compiles and runs it?
Yeah, they have some other. I've literally spent 5 minutes, but it's pretty cool. I mean, I won't start messing around.
Did you have to define what run did, or is that built in?
No, it was built in command line.
Okay.
And then, like, if you make a new project, you do .NET new, and it'll make a new one in that folder.
Is this based on CSproj?
I don't know what that means. Like the new.
Is there like a project file?
There's a project JSON.
Like, but that's going away, isn't it? Oh, is it?
.NET new.
But the project JSON doesn't reference program.cs or your greeter.cs. So how does it know what?
I bet it just runs project by default, I guess. Be my guess.
Yeah, but how does it know what to compile?
I mean, it runs program CS. I wonder if it just does everything. That'd be a good question. You're right. It does have everything inside there. Oh, I guess there's no way for me, because I'm wondering if it's a little bit like was it Bundler that would look at your references and then compile everything based on that? Because I am referencing greeter here, and so it would maybe know to look for.
Well, you're referencing. Yeah. I mean, they would have to walk a tree somehow, but in order to get a tree, it would have to compile it. So there would have to be some intermediate format where it's not compiled, but it's tokenized, and it's gathering. See, that's weird though, because how does it know what? I mean, you could have two greeter.cs's.
Well, let's try it out here. See. Second greeter. Let's just see what
The
happens.
first one had no namespace. Give this one a namespace just to make it live.
I just want to see if it'll even compile. See, I want to see if it gives me errors. I see it already. So it's looking at all the files. At least Visual Studio Code is.
Yeah, it's definitely looking at everything.
I think that should give a namespace, right? Oh no, you have to put rapid namespace, don't you? Namespace,
namespace,
BB.
BB, yeah.
Yeah, I see. Too many other languages. Like, you just stick the namespace on the side. It's all good.
And get rid of the VBB dot, yeah. So now it'll be fine, but now you have to go to program.cs and you have to say using this namespace. Oh, it's still confused though.
Yeah, because it's saying ambiguous relationship greeter.
So it's just by default considering all CS files.
That seems to make sense.
All right. But that's a VS Code thing. Try to .NET run it anyway. I bet .run will work, maybe? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you put a using, now put at the top of this, put a using VBB, and it shouldn't compile that. I'm assuming. What?
What does this green tell me? Unnecessary using directive.
Well, yeah, but that's just the VS Code's thing. Yeah. Well, how does it figure out?
Just see if I can get it to run. Well, there. If you can get it to run.
But how is it choosing shit?
My guess would be defaulted to the lowest name. If I gave a different namespace, it would probably wouldn't know which one to use. But since it's higher up, I assume it'll take priority. Actually, my thing doesn't even have a namespace, so.
Yeah, try give me a namespace. So weird.
Alright, so they compiled and everything expected. If I said.
But that's because you have VB. No?
Yeah, so if I get rid of there, it doesn't know what to do. But if I did now using high.
Now put both usings on there. We will get this failed.
We will make an error. There we go. Ambiguous reference.
Okay. I mean, I hate CS proj files, and I guess this is the best way of getting around it, but weird.
Alright, so what was the other thing? Oh, I was going to share. Let me see if I can stop this so I can pull up the other code that I was working on. So I need to do screen scraping, and I was using Elixir, and so I have. Let me get rid of that. Let me pull up the code. So there we go. Now I'll share these screens. I can go through this, but I thought the code was pretty cool. The site I'm looking at is WoW Progress.
So wait.
So what this does is, I play WoW, Mythic Raid, and we're pretty competitive about it. We've been on a break since the expansion is going to be announced and other stuff. But when we get into it, like, you're competing against the other guilds on your server, and so to see the server that you're part of, know the server name, we're in Khadgar, but that's connected to Ilaria. So I want to pull all the guilds and their world rank, and I'm going to rank them based on how I read them in for the server rank, and then how their progress is pulled in. And the library I'm using is Fluxy. Floki. I keep on saying Fluxy. It's Floki. It's pretty cool. So you just take an HTML string, and then you can start finding things using CSS selectors and keep on piping things down. So to get, I was look here, like to get the rows, I was looking at this and saying, hey, I want, in this table with the class is easy. I want the table with rating in it, and then I want to loop through all the table rows. And then this is where, Elixir, we're talking about patterns, the little pattern of looping through recursively a collection. You don't have to do it this way. You can use some of the built-in enumerator functions, but sometimes I like it stylistically. But I think the best practice is probably use the other built-in enum functions.
Hey, in Elixir, by the way, do you have to write recursive functions in a tail call format in order to get the optimization?
That's an interesting question. Well, yeah, if you're gonna do it for recursive, then yes, you need to do the tail call. And what that tail call means is that we have to call the function at the end and not have any branches and stuff like that. Right. So that then it can optimize for tail call recursive. Okay. Now, is this tail call recursive better performant than like doing an enum map or enum each? I don't think so.
No, and I mean I'm totally down with the recursion. Like I agree. Like that actually makes a lot of sense to me. It's just sometimes really difficult to find the tail call version of the thing. I'm like, yeah, I understand that in theory it has a tail call format.
Right.
Yeah.
But I found getting the information pretty easy. Being able to pull out what I need to get out of the information is pretty nice. I've gotten a lot better at regular expressions, and regular expressions named captures is freaking cool. I don't remember ever doing that in any other language, but I love it.
What is it? Oh, regex captures? Oh, yeah. No, that's possible in all languages.
Yeah, I assume it is. It's just I never really explored it, but I've used it a lot in Elixir land. So I'm able to pull out from here the progress, the total, and what qualifier. But yeah, anyway, so pretty cool library, Floki, for doing web scraping.
And I'm guessing internally it's using that same thing that we looked at.
That's what I thought about. I didn't look. Let's take a look. Yeah. That is it. Probably because the reason why is because take a look at this pattern here. Your return, you have the element, the attributes, and then the children. And I was like, oh, I've seen that before. I know what's going on there. So let's take a look and see. Oh, that's don't even know what that means. See, going through here, parser, parse. Let's go see if there's a parser somewhere inside here. Yep, Mochi Web.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the same thing. I thought for a while that I couldn't find a web scraper, and that was what I was going to use. I was like, I'll just use this, and then I somehow just stumbled upon this, and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I want. I still think it might be fun to implement one anyway, just because it'd be an interesting challenge, especially with CSS selectors. But anyway, that's it. That's what I've done this week and stuff.
Cool. Anything else we want to talk about? Anybody have anything to show? Seth, you want to show something next time? You got anything you want to show?
Maybe.
All right. Maybe indeed.
To implement your timer thing in Elm. And then you can
in Elm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the natural evolution of it. It's going to be Practice Timer Enterprise Edition.
Yeah, I I did reach out to a couple Clojure guys. I need to figure out. I'd like to get them all on at the same time because I know one of the guy that runs like the Lisp casts and like the Clojure Gazette. And I know another guy that literally wrote a book on Clojure right now. I could actually probably get a third guy that wrote a different book on Clojure. And it'd be like fun to get them on all at the same time because we don't have any Clojure representatives here. Those guys are cool.
I know a lot of passionate Clojure people too, but I never got into it.
Yeah,
But I'd
did
love to hear
yours
some.
never stop quoting Rich Hickey also?
No, no, but they do talk a lot about
All right.
like state and building their own languages and et cetera, and how they wish the world was more Clojure. Most of the Clojure people I know, they don't do it for their job, and they wish they could do it more for their job.
Cool. All right. Well, this has been another successful virtual
Yeah, it's
brew.
been great. Yeah, a lot of design pattern discussion. Got to share some Elixir stuff. That's always good. And we'll see everybody next week.
All right.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.